Okay, all right. Hello, everyone. So I'll try to do my best to keep this as entertaining as possible so that you don't fall asleep after lunch. I think this is probably one of the difficult slots, right? But hopefully it'll be engaging. There are going to be some repetition for what we've already heard today, but I think it probably just highlights that it's, the sort of regulatory space around devices at the moment is just a really hot topic because there's just so many changes. I work at GSK in the device engineering group there, where I have a team that looks after all our late-stage credentials. So we do really get in the deep end in terms of filing new products and a lot of engagement with the regulatory authorities there. So really what I want to talk to you about today is some of the experiences we've had in that recently. And I really hope that maybe that can inspire some debate. Maybe some of you can recognize some of the things that we've experienced and just really want to open up the dialogue around these things. Okay, so I just wanted to start out, hopefully this works. There we go, all right, great. So I just wanted to start out showing you two of our devices. So actually this first device you can see here, Imitrex, was actually launched in 1980. And it's actually an auto-injector. So it's the first auto-injector we at GSK had put on the market. And it actually took us nearly sort of 30 years to get our next auto-injector on the market, which is our recently launched Benlister device that you can see here. So really, if let's spot the difference, there are some obvious differences here, but actually they're both auto-injectors. They both target delivery of a liquid in the subcutaneous layer. They use similar spring mechanisms. There's a lot of similarities between them. It's also been developed, so I wasn't personally around when the first one was developed, but it has been developed by a very similar team, actually using a lot of the same device development technologies or techniques that we use now. So some of them has been mentioned earlier, really following these waterfall diagrams, making sure we got robust devices, all the sort of verification testing that we need to do, but also human factors testing, something we've always done, and I think it's very important to do. And all of that has been done on both devices, but obviously the big difference here is really the change in the regulatory landscape. When we launched the Imitrex, there wasn't really that much focus on the device. It was more looked at as a medicine project or product, whereas we'd launched with the Benlister device and some of our newer devices, we've really seen a change in that regulatory landscape. There's a lot more interest from the regulatory authorities around these products, and really what we've seen here is an effect of all these new regulations that's come out lately. Okay. So what has actually changed? So a couple of years ago, we submitted a clinical files on IND to the FDA, and we were basically just asking to go into a clinical program with a combination device. And it was really the first time we were at that stage of the clinical development after all the new combination rules had come in from the FDA. And we felt that feedback very much at that time. We got a lot of feedback from them around the device. There was a lot of interest in it, which we just never seen before. So really, that's the change that we've seen. Is this sort of extra challenge that we're getting there, and really an interest in how we develop our devices. Okay, so yeah, as you've seen before, this is some of the new guidance that's come out, and that's really leading this. So the first one in 2015, obviously we got this guidance out on combination products, and really the term combination product was sort of started then by the FDA. I think before that we'd been typically talking about sort of devised elements of medicines, or we would have terms like that, but we wouldn't have a combination or a file that would be a combination. It would be a drug product file, or it would be a device file. But this is sort of the first time we saw them really coming together. And not only did we see these initial rules come together, it was also that we had a lot of guidelines coming through with that. And as they're coming through, we're seeing that they're being enforced as well. And probably similarly, we've had the European MDR has been released last year, and it's going to come into play in 2020. And probably what we'll see there as well is there's going to be a lot of guidelines coming out. We've not seen them yet, but I'm sure they will be coming, and we're going to have to be prepared for them. Okay, so I was going to step a little bit back as well, although, again, we've probably spoken a little bit about this before. But what is then, what is a combination product, right? Because in the past, we've probably looked at these 3 examples. Definitely the middle one, we would probably call that a combination product, or at least there would be some device elements to that. It's got some mechanisms. The device is actually controlling the delivery of the product. So it is there's definitely a device element to that. But how about the other 2? And this is really where it starts becoming interesting, at least from the FDA point of view, is we're seeing much more now that the other 2 types of devices, so a very simple device, which is manually operated, or a co-packaged of some sort, also becomes a combination product now. And the reason we're seeing that is because the combination is not just the device. It's not just the mechanical functioning plastic components that we've got there in the middle. It really is, at least from the FDA, seen as the whole interface, the whole user interface. So it is the device along with the packaging, along with the instructions for use, or anything else that we supply with that becomes the combination product. And so therefore, all of these at the moment are really combination products. And there's a lot of things you could pick out and talk about in relation to these combination products, but one of the things I've really decided to talk about today, and where we've seen a lot of regulatory challenge lately, is around how we conduct human factors with these devices and how we ensure that the devices are good for or appropriate for use with our intended user populations. So that leads me on to talking a little bit about the human factors considerations. And again, we've heard about human factors considerations today. I will not go into the details of what we've seen through human factors testing, but taking it up to another area, which is more about how we interact with the agencies and on a regulatory level around human factors. Because we have seen a lot of challenge, and we've seen a lot of new guidelines come out in relation to this. So we've had FDA guidance on human factors, which which came out, I think, last year or 2 years ago now. And also we've seen some guidance come through from the MHRA, so we can expect there to be a lot of challenge as well there on from the EMA. What we've seen, what we've always done is we've always done human factors, and we think it's really important to do human factors, both at a late stage but also at an early stage, to really understand how your product works with your user population. But what we've not seen in the past is really the level of scrutiny around how we do it and what we submit up front. Okay. So just taking a little bit of a step back is, as I said, why do we need human factors? Well, it is a really, really important tool for designing, and we should be using it throughout the development process. Human factors itself, to really initially form the device and what should look like, should it have a button, should not have a button, some of the things we've seen earlier on today. And then finally at the end, making sure that the whole pack is actually a good interaction with patients. And one of the reasons for that is that, and I think it has been mentioned earlier today again, is that we as designers can sit here and think, oh, I've designed this device and it's completely logical. Why would no one be able to use it because it's just a two-step thing, for example? Well, we might not be able to see it from the patient perspective. They may have some pre-knowledge with something that was similar that makes them want to use it in a different way. Or they might start from a completely different place than we do. And we just can't think of those things up front. So it is really important to get our devices into people's hands or our patients' hands as soon as possible. And I've got a little example of this with me here, which will hopefully highlight that point a little bit. So hopefully this will be a bit of entertaining.
My asthma. They said they'd fix it, but it didn't make any difference at all.
Well, sometimes doctors make mistakes, Anna, and you have to try twice as hard to fix them. Are you using your inhaler?
All the time. Go through one a week.
You sure you're using it right?
Do I look like an idiot?
Nope. Why don't you show me how your inhaler works?
Jerk.
Okay, so this is obviously a fully made up scenario, and this would never happen in real life, right? But it actually does, it really does. Sometimes you'd be really surprised, and it might just be from the place that she was sitting, she might just not have thought of it. But a designer would probably never have thought either that someone would not think to get their medicines into their lungs, right? So it's things like this that we would be able to tease out through human factors. Obviously, we wouldn't be able to catch everything, but we could at least try to be in a good position as possible. And there's a lot of good reasons to do it. So it's not just for regulatory reasons or even because it probably will make your customer complaints lower. It's definitely also very much to keep the patient in focus and really making sure that they get the best device that they can have. And especially when we're designing medical devices, it's a really big responsibility we have to make sure that it works all the time and it's reliable, because patients really trust in us in doing that. Okay, so just to sort of pull that back a little bit to the FDA guidance. So what is it that the FDA guidance is telling us? And as I said earlier, this is very much in line with, I think, probably what a lot of us has done in the past. But I think what it really does, it takes it up to that level of, let's look at both, all these different areas. So make sure we look at the environment. What is the environment that people are going to be using this product in? Who are the users? Are they professionals? Have they already got some experience? What are their potential mobility issues? And then the interface, and the interface is really important. This is from the moment they get the pack, they open it, they use the IFU or they don't use the IFU, all the things that we give them, is there going to be training? What does that training look like? And all of that needs to be put into the device use situation. We test it and then we circle around until we get it right. So it really is a key opportunity to optimize and validate the design patient interface. Okay, so I'll get on to my case study now. So really this is taking it back again to the situation that we had a couple of years ago where we submitted this IND. And we had we submitted our product and we said we want to go into some clinical studies with this device, and we were relying on the clinical study as well to help us with some feedback. So we had done some formative human factors testing initially to make sure that we felt that the device was optimized and was in a good place to go into the clinic. But we felt that there was still some development to be done, definitely on things like packaging. We had clinical packaging, but we were not quite ready yet where we would be in a commercial situation. And this was really the first time we started seeing some feedback on some of the draft guidance that we've seen come out from the FDA. And I've got a screenshot here of what that looks like. And it's this specific guidance that talks to human factor studies and related clinical study consideration in combination product design and development. There's a phrase in there around if we do risk assessment to show that the device needs to go through human factors for us to de-risk that, the FDA really now is expecting us to submit that upfront to them before we go into our validation. And really, they would have preferred if we did that even before we went into our clinical studies. That was not a timeline that we had planned around, and we were able to, at a risk, I suppose, we were able to do these things in parallel. But there was really this ask around having all this information up front and having it reviewed. And the initial feedback we had was actually that they were going to take at least they could take up to 120 days to review that material, which means that all of a sudden, the time you've planned to do your validation has either moved really far out in the future, or you need to start much, much earlier. And it's not just, they're not just asking to see what it is that we're planning to do. They want to see all these things that are listed here. So they want to see our risk assessment. So we had risk assessments spoken about earlier. They want to see that, what came out of that. They want to see summary of all the known user problems we know that are already surrounding these types of devices. They want to see all the formative testing that we've already done that proves that we're in a good place, and how we've reacted to the findings that we found. They want to see summary of any changes that we have made. They want to see the full validation protocol, so this includes moderators' transcripts, consent forms, all these sort of things. And then the final thing that they also have been asking us for, and they've been very consistently asking us for, is they want 5 intent to market samples. And that's full samples with the outer packaging, secondary packaging, your IFU, if you're putting your device in a tray, everything as you intended for the market. And they want all this upfront very, very early on. And so for us, that's really meant that we've had, even though we've always done human factors and we've always done this development process, having this requirement means that we need to start a lot of these things much, much earlier than what we have done in the past, specifically around secondary packaging, because that's not something that's usually developed until quite late on, and you're going to go into commercial manufacture. So we really have had to change the way we work across our group, and we really need to start looking at it as a combination product, and not just someone's doing the drug, someone's doing the device, someone's doing the packaging, and someone's doing the filing at the end of it, which is maybe where we've been a little bit more before. These new rules have really, really forced us into working together across research and development, across the different functions, and across to our manufacturing as well, to ensure that we do get these things right really early on, so that we can confidently submit this. It is a real new situation, because we have to actually hand things over that are not fully developed and fully finished yet, and having to deal with the consequences around that. So as I said, we did do all of this. We did in this instance, we've done it in parallel. It was accepted. What we have seen is we've seen comments on how we do our user groups. So that's been a very hot topic. How we do training and how we ensure that that's being fairly represented. We're seeing a lot of heavy additions or comments on our instructions for use, so there's a lot of opinion around that. And all of this, obviously, we've used that to help update our products. And I think once we've been through it a few times, we probably get used to it, but it's definitely forced us to work in a new way. Okay. So what do we learn from that? As I said, and the reason that I called my talk here, "Who Moved My Device?" I don't know. You might be familiar with the book, "Who's Moved My Cheese," which is really about adapting to change. And I think that's what this is about. We're as a community of device developers, I think, well, certainly for us, and I know there's a lot of really good quality products on the market, is that we've probably always worked in this way, but now that we're being so heavily regulated, and now that we're being so scrutinized in a way, we really need to start changing some of those things and some of the ways that we're working. So we need to think about how we present things when we present them. I think specifically starting earlier is something that we've learned, is that we need to start much, much earlier with our device development and try to find solutions as to how can we make that work as a business. And then I think the other thing that we've really learned is that we need to be out there engaging with the agencies, because they're also learning. And they're putting in this new guidance because they think it's necessary, and I agree with them. I think it's really good initiatives, but we need to make sure that we're staying on that journey with them. So what's next? Certainly from our perspective, we're also trying, and I've heard other people say that today, is really trying to engage, through conferences like this, talking to people about what their experiences are. But also through some external collaborations, and there's certainly a couple of external collaborations that I'm on, that we're trying to engage both with the FDA, but also very importantly now the EMA, now that there's the new MDR out, which is going to have an impact on combination products. I think it was described earlier, but we've seen Article 117, which is going to be a big change to the way we work, specifically around notified bodies, and potentially needing approval from notified bodies before we submit to the FDA, to the EMA. And if that's the case, again, we have to start earlier. So it's really all about starting earlier and having that engagement. So I would encourage all of you as well to be doing that. And if anyone is interested in any of those external collaborations, I'm certainly part of the EB group and also RX360. And so if anyone's interested in joining any of those for discussions, feel free to come and talk to me about that. So that was it, I think. So are there any questions?